Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everyone, thanks for your patience. I'm going to start bringing over people as panelists so everyone can talk if they want. Just patience, please. Hey Sarah, I got your email. Are you good to go now?
I am. How do I unmute?
There should be a small microphone button on the right, somewhere on the right side of your screen.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you.
Patience with me. I'm just bringing people over so that everyone can talk. All right. Great. So it is 11:30. We have everyone over that, and I might just take a little break if people come in. And here we go. All right. Thanks everyone for your patience with that. I've made everyone a panelist, so you should be able to unmute and speak up at any time, ask questions, provide feedback. And we're going to get started with our presentation now. Here's our agenda for today. I'll do a quick welcome. And then Chris and Julie are going to do some project updates. Julie's going to present a draft site plan. Julie's going to then turn it over to CDM Smith. We have some architects and engineers from CDM Smith here to talk about the architecture of the buildings. And then following that discussion, that'll be the main discussion, I think, today. But following that, I'd love to talk to everyone about next steps in terms of bringing design concepts to the community and getting the broader community's feedback. And then we'll end with some next steps. So first, I think I've been saying this every month since since COVID happened. Really appreciate your patience. I was just talking to Julie before the meeting started that I feel like if we were meeting in person, we would know each other a lot better by now, and really appreciate everyone's patience with us through this. It's not exactly how we wanted to do it, but we're making it work. So thank you. I forgot to start recording the meeting. Oh, we are recording the meeting. So we're recording the meeting, and I'll follow up with a YouTube link like we've been doing. Any issues, feel free to text me or email me. I believe, yep, we're all good right now. And then I want to welcome a new member, Bethany Yaffe. She actually applied to be part of this group. I don't think we're really accepting new members of the group, but she initially applied to be part of the group when everyone else did. But she was working for one of the engineering firms that we work with, so we weren't entirely comfortable having her work with us in this role. But she's a Westminster resident and got a new job, and I think almost immediately after getting a new job, she reached out, and we are very excited to have her as part of the design working group. Bethany, if you'd like to say anything, feel free to unmute yourself or not, whatever you prefer.
Sure. Just thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here and be a part of this team.
Thanks, Bethany. So that's the good news. The sad news is that Mary Stahl, who's been working with you all from the very beginning, she did take a new job opportunity and is no longer with the city. I think she really enjoyed working with everyone on this group, but but had to do what's best for her and her family. So we respect that. And Julie Kaler, who was Mary's supervisor, is now going to be the engineering lead as part of this group for the time being. So I just wanted to share those few updates during the welcome. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Christine Gray, who's going to give you a few rate updates before we get into the project.
Thank you, Andrew, and hi, everybody. So big project and a huge monumental task for this team to accomplish is getting this Water 2025 facility built. And to build it, we need to fund it. And so part of the discussion with City Council in March is going to be how are we, what are we recommending to City Council for rate increases? And then how does this project fit into that whole timeline? So on the slide here, you can see that on March 15th, we'll be talking to City Council about the 2022 rates. If you recall, we did a 0% rate increase for our customers in 2021 to acknowledge the devastating effects that COVID-19 was having on our community. And so we still need to fund the repair and replacement and the operation and maintenance of our utility. So we'll be coming back to City Council in a couple weeks to talk with them about what 2022 rates will look like. We did a lot of work in advance of those recommendations. So as Andrew has noted on the slide here, there are a significant number of policy adjustments. We are looking at some improved billing. So things like moving more towards a 30-day or a 31-day billing cycle, and also billing on actual number of gallons used. We have some savings accounts that are implemented occasionally to manage things like hot and dry conditions or the lack of, and then some capital savings accounts that get funded to provide savings for projects that we have going forward. We're using some of those savings accounts in 2022 and out years to help pay for expenses and manage the rates. We did a lot of review of our infrastructure investment schedule to see what we could move to provide the lowest possible rates while keeping a sustainable and safe utility. So we did a lot of looking at what those projects were line by line and seeing which ones could get pushed out and then which ones needed to stay where they are. Water 2025 is our highest priority. Along with that, we had looked at what CIP projects we want to be funding out into the future. So we are not looking at just the short term, the 2022, 2023, 2024 timeline. We're looking out at 2040. So we had a pretty aggressive annual funding schedule for capital projects way out into the future, and we reduced that. So that made a difference in the near term. And then we looked at market-based financial projections to reduce costs. So we have some annual escalation factors, which is a fancy term for how much are we increasing stuff every year to make sure that we know what things are going to cost out into the future. So we have parts and chemicals and leases that we have with other organizations. We have salaries. How much were we increasing those? And then can we reduce those at all? So we did reduce those quite a bit to reflect what's going on in the market right now, and we will continue to take a look at those going forward. As well as looking at those escalation factors, we looked at our debt. So we issue debt to pay for projects, and some of those assumptions we managed. Instead of having a 20-year time frame for issuing debt, like a debt issue has 20 years to live and pay off, we made that 30 years, so longer. I'm looking at my screen and seeing how I can make it look bigger. In addition to that, we reduced the interest rate that we were assuming. So obviously, interest rates fluctuate quite a bit. We had a pretty conservative interest rate built in. We backed that off quite a bit, so it was more in line with what's going on in the financial world right now. So we have done a bunch of different things. You will see the March 15th staff report come out on the city's website next Wednesday, the 10th. That's when those get published. And we'll be doing a presentation on the night of the March 15th meeting as well. So please feel free to listen in. Andrew's got the westywaterrates.us website at the bottom there, so that's a great place to get some more information about what we're doing, and also has a survey for our residents and customers to take to see if what we're doing meets your needs. So please feel free to check that out. And I will stay on for a few more minutes if there are questions or concerns. I do actually have a noon meeting that I have to get ready for. So I'm always willing to answer questions or to take your calls. We can certainly, give you the information you're looking for, but I will hand it back to Andrew.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate it. Just check in with everyone. I think I've made everyone panelists now. So if you want to speak up and ask questions, you can unmute yourself. I'm now going to turn it over to Julie, who's going to give some project updates. Take it away, Julie.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm happy to be back talking with you all at the Design Working Group. And I've got some bullet items on the slide. And I also want to acknowledge a couple of emails we've received from working group members. One has been on a request for sharing reports and plans. We did some reports like a geotech report and environmental resources report. They were drafts. They went back to our consultant, and I'll be honest, it's taken quite a while. And I was on a call 2 weeks ago to address a couple of concerns. On the geotech report, we had to send the geotech back out to the site to get a little bit more information. They were held up by the snow days. I believe they've been out, information collected, working on it. And then there were some things about the maps. In several of those reports, we had kind of a discrepancy, like, is this the project or the property? Anyway, we got it squared away. When the reports are back to the city in a final form, we will be able to share them with you. I'm sorry it's been taking so long, and I share the frustration. It has been taking quite a while. And Tim's right here, and he can shake his head. Yes, we are working on that, and he knows that we've been working on it. Sorry, it happens sometimes. Now for the updates. So the pilot plant, the results of the pilot plant have been really phenomenal. The filtration assay tests revealed that the city will be able to save money on construction by having slightly smaller filters and pushing more water through filters. It gives us money on concrete. And kind of the biggest and maybe sexiest thing in a really weird way is that we tested fire water. Like, when we have a fire in our watershed, what's that water going to be like? We're calling it catastrophic water. But the results of the pilot test have really informed what we should do about the full-scale process. And that's a topic for a later date. It gets really geeky. I love talking about it. So does Tim. But we have benefited quite a bit from that pilot plant, which stays in beneficial use to the city because we did purchase the pilot plant. Onto the preliminary design. We're coming up on about the 30% completion level, and we are on track to complete a report to the state. It's called a basis of design report. This is a requirement for any new water treatment facility or any significant modifications. Once CDM Smith completes this report and the state gets their eyes on it, we're moving far towards getting a green light to go on a final design. We anticipate this basis of design report to come in June, July. So, I mean, that'll be here before we know it. And it's really exciting to see it all come together. In the interim, on a parallel path, construction phase by meeting
upstairs or downstairs.
Contractors.
We're on our
Want to
meeting.
help the city with this construction phase. And we're looking for
Yes, Lucy.
We will come to a point where we're looking for value and cost, but right now, I call it dating. We're dating a bunch of these contractors to make sure that they like us and we like them before we start on this long-term construction journey together. My next bullet item is the raw water pipeline, the raw water that'll tie into some existing raw water lines. And it'll bring the raw water, the unfinished water, to our new treatment plant. It's under design. They're probably in about the 15% range, meaning they're trying to pick the pipeline alignment. I expect them to have about a third, well, I expect them to pick the alignment later this spring, and then we will be furthering that design throughout the summer. Staff is working very hard on a request for proposal for engineering services for the finished water pipeline. That's once the pilot or the plant treats the water, you need to push it back out into the distribution system. Quarter 2, 2021, hopefully we'll have that finished water pipeline under design with an engineer. My second to last item is the signage. If you are a trail walker, I hope you have noticed 2 signs talking about you're really close to the Water 2025 treatment site. There should be a little star. It should give you some different information about how the treatment plant and its facilities would like to interact with the open space that's currently set on the south and east sides of our facility. We anticipate a very large sign that you'll be able to see from Westminster Boulevard and probably US 36. It's in our contracting mechanism, and it'll be a much larger sign, probably Water 2025 coming soon, something like that. And then my last bullet is the reports, which I mentioned first up. And then I'd also like to talk about some emails that we've received from working group members wanting not to let me forget about the possibility of having a trail on the north side of the property. Andrew has brought me up to speed with respect to previous conversations. No one seems opposed to a trail on the north side. And I want to clarify that the trail concept is still a possibility. And we're not quite in a place with the whole project for me to say, yes, it's a go 100%. And I know that's not very satisfying. We will get to a place where we can commit behind the scenes, and Chris alluded to this earlier. I'll point that way because that's where she is on my screen. Never mind details. But working through the cost for the entire project and working with our city council and ratepayers, we're feeling a lot of responsibility to get the numbers right. And so committing to all the different parts is still kind of up in the air. We're juggling quite a few balls, but we're moving in a good direction by talking with you, talking with City Council, and getting more clarification about rates and fees that help fund this project. So kind of a long answer. I hear you. I'm not saying no. I'm saying as we move forward with the project, I'll be in a better space to consider the trail and other aspects in a more definitive manner. Sorry, still super wishy-washy, not satisfying. Sorry. It's just where we are with the things right now. So with that, Andrew, please save me by going to the next slide.
Sure thing, Julie. I don't think I need to save you from anything. I think it's best to be honest here, and I think you're being honest. And so I think one of the great things as part of this group is that you do have the power to advocate for certain things, and please keep holding us accountable to what you think is best for the community, because we're, like Julie mentioned, there's certain other factors that we're working on, and your perspective is unique and very much appreciated. We did get a question. Harold Stark asked, I saw one sign being replaced twice. Was that broken due to wind or vandalism? I think I can answer that. Julie, correct me if I get anything wrong, but the trail signs that we installed were initially installed on some temporary posts. Our open space has some standards for sign mounts, and so they should be being installed with some more permanent sign mounts that will look a little bit better and more aligned with kind of the look and feel of what people expect for open space. I think that's what you probably saw, Harold.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. One, it's now on 2 posts, so that's probably what that is then. Thank you.
Exactly. Yep, I think that's what it is. And I think I got all the questions there. Just wanted to do a check-in. Does anybody else have any questions about what was just discussed?
Yeah, Andrew, this is Robin. Can Julie talk a little bit more about that water pipeline, kind of generally from where to where? Do you know that yet, or?
Sure. There's 2 sets of pipe. Well, there's the raw water pipeline that will feed the raw water, and right now we're considering the alignment. Think about where Stanley Lake is and understand that the city has raw water pipelines that generally follow Big Dry Creek. They come through a park on the west side of Wadsworth Parkway, and the name just went out of my head. And it comes right along 92nd Avenue for a while, and then drops down to the existing Semper. The goal is to tie in and use as much of those existing pipes as we can. So we're considering there's 3 or 4 different routes. Some of them go through existing roads like Old Wadsworth Boulevard and kind of up and over. And by up and over, I mean south to north and then moving east. And then other routes come farther east, closer to where Pierce is right now, and then they wind their way through. Some of them cut through undeveloped areas. Some of the routes cut through open space. Some of the routes come just straight all the way to 92nd and then up Westminster Boulevard. When we do route analysis, we consider all routes, any physical way to get the water there. We don't discriminate against a road or an open space or an undeveloped area. We don't. That comes in later. And so when I say that they're at about the 15% design, they're looking through all those different routes and trying to find reasons to knock off an alignment or to pursue a different alignment. So we consider economic and non-economic costs. We consider all the things you have to cross, like, is there a railroad? Are there drainage canals like Farmers Highline Canal? Do we go through open space? There's an economic impact to crossing open space as well as like a physical gut-wrenching impact. We consider all those. Does that answer your question, or would you like me to continue on the finished water portion?
No, that's good. I would just put a question in the chat. Is it safe to assume that that would go under 36? Or not really?
Some of the alignments do go under 36.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Great question, Robin. I don't see any other questions in our chat, and I'm gonna move the presentation forward. There'll be plenty of more opportunities for discussion and questions. So I'm going to turn it back over to Julie, who's going to talk about a draft site plan. Take it away, Julie.
Thank you again, Andrew. So before I show you the actual picture, I want to plant some ideas in your head about what we're going to be looking at. So the Water 2025 program plans for a full build out of the site, meaning that we will put to good use all of the 40 acres on the site. Our goal is 60 million gallons a day of water treatment with space for constructability in the future. The time frame right now for the 60 MGD is about 2040. So Water 2025 will be constructed in phases. Phase 1 is 2023 to 2025, and we're preparing for that phase right now. Our focus is on constructing 30 million gallons per day worth of treatment. So it's about half the total goal. Phase 2, right now, we think is in the 2035 to 2040 timeframe. So we're going to focus on more treatment and the admin building. So this is a big deal. I want you to hear things like focusing on 30 MGD worth of treatment and that the admin building is going to be pushed to phase 2. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. And then way out there in the way out there years, our future phases where we're going to do plant repair and rehabilitation and then other upgrades. Before I show you the picture, I want to talk about these concepts of bodies of water. I understand there's a community concern to minimize water because of nuisances like geese. I get it. One of the big possibilities for different bodies of water is the solids handling and how we deal with solids on the water plant. We have one extreme. I'll talk to you when we have the pictures. I get it. I want to talk to you in the pictures in front of us. And the second is the stormwater needs. Stormwater is regulated by the federal government, and the city has taken over permit ownership. So we are held responsible to our own city to meet federal and state. Stormwater is a function of size of the land, how much land you disturb, and how much impermeable surface you introduce compared to what's existing. So considering that we've got a former farmland completely permeable, and we're going to be introducing roofs and driveways, we're going to have some stormwater things. Andrew and I were talking about this yesterday, and he's like, Julie, aren't stormwater catchment areas usually dry? I'm like, yeah, because the goal is to capture the stormwater and let it infiltrate to resume its natural path. And so when we see stormwater basins that are full, it kind of suggests that they're clogged and need to be cleaned. So I guess the message is we have to do something, but I'm hearing you as our neighbor. We don't want a lot of this. So with that, Andrew, next slide, please.
Sure. Yeah. Just Julie, just got a comment and a question. I just want to lift up real quick before we get into that. James Phillips says, I'm opposed to spending Water 2025 funding on trails. This property is extremely expensive. I'd rather see the city require any future developments put a trail in on the north side. And James, that's probably my fault. You know, Julie asked for what the group's feeling was about the trail. I did tell her that I don't think anyone's opposed to the trail, so that's my mistake, James. And I think and Angela just submitted a comment saying that she agrees with Angela. So clearly, there's not as much consensus here as what I interpreted. And so, like Julie said, this is something that needs to continue. That it's not the right time to evaluate it just yet. And so that clearly it's not a clear-cut issue, and something that we'll need to discuss again in the future once the timing is better on the project. And then, Julie, before I'll pass this one back to you, Linda asked, how does the phase in of the project fit in with the phase out of Semper?
Ooh, awesome question. So phase 1 for 30 MGD of treatment. Once we complete phase one of the new plant, it is our intention to decommission about half of Semper. So Semper is currently rated for 44 million gallons per day. We've got two banks, two sets of filters. The oldest set of filters, we will lean in the direction of decommissioning those filters and associated pipelines and so on. And so we would have half of Semper. And I would think when we're complete in 2025, final commissioning in 26, I would look in the late 26 to early 2027 for the retiring half of Semper. Following the completion of phase 2, 60 MGD, we would fully retire Semper. So sometime after 2040 would be our expected full retirement of Semper. Here it is. I'd like you all to take a deep breath and just look at this site plan for a minute. There's a lot of different colors and boxes and shapes. My next slide I'm going to walk through with you. But the big thing I would like you to notice is that we have 40 acres. We intend to demonstrate on every site plan how we are going to use our 40 acres of space. This site plan is showing you a campus-style water treatment facility. Semper is like a campus style with one main admin building with other, like the lab and so on, with other outbuildings, compared to Northwest, which is more like a single building. When it comes to being a good neighbor and fully occupying a site, a campus is more in line with what we think a good neighbor would want compared to a big monolithic kind of building. Campus style also works well for the city with respect to operating. It allows you to operate and particularly maintain different processes without harming or jeopardizing other properties or processes. So for example, well, I'll get into that when I show you the next slide. The other important aspect about showing you these different colors and all the different shapes is that in a very early meeting, we heard you loud and clear about keeping the project tidy and focused on water treatment. And I kind of call it avoiding the yard sale appearance. I really want to manage other people's expectations. And by this, I'm talking about my own colleagues in the city. Manage their expectations like, hey, Julie, you've got this giant site. Couldn't we build a blah, 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 blah to house our bits and pieces? And I don't want to be disrespectful to the other people's needs, but the site is going to be devoted to water treatment. It's not going to be devoted to garaging and housing all kinds of stuff. So with that, Andrew, have there been any comments, or should we move to the next slide and I'll talk about what the different shapes mean and so on?
So we did receive a question, but we're just a hair behind schedule. So I think it might be best for us to go through the next few slides and then we'll address a few questions all at once, if that's okay.
Yeah. So in phase 1 of Water 2025, I said we're going to focus on 30 MGD worth of treatment. Andrew, next, or thank you. So I've put a big yellow oval on the guts of 30 MGD of treatment. It's the main processes: flocculation, sedimentation, filtration, and they form this rectangle. This is 30 million gallons worth. You'll see right to the right, it's a future phase, another 30, and then farther east, it's the final 30 that we need for constructability. 30 million gallons per day comes with other things that make it successful, like chemical storage and pumping. We need those chemicals to treat the water. After that, we also need electrical service and different equipment to support the main treatment. When we're letting go of the admin building, we need a control room for the operators to sit in, to monitor what's going on, and a small laboratory to help them do daily checks for water quality and equipment performance. Once we treat the water, we need to push it out to the distribution system. So we have on-site water storage tanks that come with a pumping station. There we go. So this is the minimum amount of water we need on the site to store, to push out to the distribution system. And then the last part is this solids handling aspect. Right now on our site plan, we're showing a combination of lagoons, drying beds. That is the oval to the top of the page, moving mostly east to west, with a small tank for a gravity belt thickener. Very recently, we were talking with CDM Smith, our design engineer, about how to best manage solids. And we've been talking with the design working group. The cheapest is the solids lagoons, but it does put a lot of ponds of water on the site. The most expensive is mechanical dewatering. It would be completely housed in a building and kind of blend with the rest of the buildings on the site. What I'm showing you in this site plan is room on the site for a possible hybrid, some lagoons with some mechanical. This is a cost decision. And kind of like other parts, we're still moving with these parts. They'll fit on the site. It's the best I can say for now. The last big item on this first phase is the red triangles, which are our proposed stormwater management areas. These represent natural lower lying areas on the site. They will mostly be facing Westminster Boulevard. And we heard a preference from the design working group to push phase one facilities to the west, to kind of keep the eastern portions of the site freed up until future phases like phase two. So this combination of the lower areas of the site plus pushing the facilities might disguise from view the stormwater ponds, the stormwater, not necessarily ponds, I'm going to say facilities in general. Andrew, have any questions come up that I should answer, or should I talk about the light purple construction laydown and then we can answer questions?
Yeah, we have several questions and comments that will be really helpful, but let's go through the next slide before we get into those.
Okay. The last aspect I wanted to talk about and acknowledge was the construction laydown areas in this lighter purple, the lavender color. During construction, I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a yard sale, that big on the north. Anywhere you could have materials, you could have sand, you could have pipe, you could have equipment, you could have vehicles. Those laydown sites are important to the functionality of the construction. A good laydown helps construction proceed more efficiently. That saves the city money. Having all of our construction within our site saves the city money so that we don't have to go get temporary construction easement from outlying properties. I'm going to acknowledge here that in some of our site plans, the lagoons that are shown at the top, near the top of the page, sometimes they're shown north to south and not east to west. That affects what happens after construction. But I want to acknowledge, and it's an indicator of, we just don't know yet about the solids, and some of these draft site plan elements are still, they're still moving around a little bit. But this site plan is a huge milestone. And so I'm happy to share that with you today. And Andrew, why don't you start with the questions?
Great. So our next slide is just to asking for comments and feedback, but maybe it's best to just leave this slide up. We received several good questions and comments. Let me start from the beginning.
Okay.
So Linda asked, does the admin building matter when Semper is decommissioned? Where are employees working?
In phase one, employees will continue to work at Semper. They will use the admin facilities and the laboratory. In phase two, when the admin building is planned to be constructed at this new site, staff will slowly migrate over. And then by 2040, Semper and all its facilities, including admin and lab, will be at the end of useful life, and we will decommission those facilities as well.
Thanks, Julie. Matt asked, will we be able to talk about how tall each of these buildings will be? I'm not sure if that's a better discussion for architecture or if we're just not there yet.
Hassan is on the line. I'll have him take that question.
During the preliminary design that we are in right now in this phase, building height structure is a rough estimate. As we move forward with the design, we'll be able to give you more information about overall heights of buildings and structures.
So in a few slides, you'll also be able to see some building profiles. I don't know what the right term is. Hassan could probably correct me there, but I think we'll get some idea of how things are shaping up in a little bit. So Sarah asked, I'm not sure where the issues are coming from for the bodies of water. Stormwater basins are generally grass open spaces, not bodies of water. Sarah, I think you're right on there. I think it'll be there. Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, but there'll likely only be water in there after a rain or a major snow melt. And then she also asked, would there not be something next to existing open space creating more of a buffer to the east? I got you. So I think what Sarah's saying is, Julie, I don't know, can you comment how much of a buffer will there be between the open space to the east and what shows on the site plan?
I can comment, but I need to check with not a figure. I need to check with a different drawing, and I will find that and get back to you, Andrew, so I can respond.
Okay. Harold says, I believe the indoor solid treatment was one of the highest priorities. It seems like we're going in a different route. Can you comment on that? And Julie, I'll take a try at this, and then you could fill in the rest. Harold, you're right on. The mechanical dewatering was the number one priority for the group. One one issue has always been that what we can do is dependent on costs, and the upfront cost of mechanical dewatering may make it just unfeasible for this initial phase. That there's only so much, money that we can borrow up front to get this project done, and that additional cost just might make it not feasible in the initial phase, but still a possibility in the second phase. And Julie, let me know, is that right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's part of our conundrum where we are right now. And Harold, I wouldn't say definitively that I feel like we're going in 3 directions at once on solids handling. And a step to one way or the other, it's just a temporary thing while we sort out the total cost of the project, and if City Council gives us support to move ahead on a rate and fee schedule that would support what we need.
So Ryan Thompson shared along the same lines. If lagoons are used, they should be completely invisible from surrounding neighborhoods. To the south, there are 4-story townhomes. To the east, the neighborhood has raised lots that has sight lines that would have clear views of the lagoons. We've seen in previous discussions that the group favors mechanical separation options despite the cost. So Julie, I guess if the cost of a mechanical dewatering facility is just too much for this initial phase, is there a less expensive option to kind of block the view of the drying beds?
I have 2 thoughts. One, we hear a lot from people who are upset with water rates and fee structures. I'm hearing support for make us a good neighbor. If you balance your views, or if you share your views in favor of different kinds of things, while we're hearing from people who are not in favor of rates and fees, I think that might give a different and more complete picture to our City Council. And screening a lagoon, a lagoon is beneficial because it's open to the atmosphere, so evaporation takes place. I'd have to look into it. I hear you. I do. If I could do everything you asked, I would. I can do some of the things that you ask, and I'm working on the others, and that's honest.
Thanks, Julie. I think one unique thing about this process is that everyone on this team's involved at a very early stage of this project. Most of the projects that we do, community engagement doesn't happen until the back end. So I also hear everyone's concerns and appreciate your patience as we work through all of this. It's a little bit messy because you're right in the middle of the project coming together. Linda asked, what's the decision point to not have lagoons and to go to mechanical dewatering? I think the major factor is cost, Linda, and it's mostly the upfront cost of what our budget and water rates are able to support as part of this project. Sarah, I think we addressed your comment. And Bethany asked, where would the water go when the treatment basins need to be emptied?
Andrew, I don't know if this needs context. I guess I was just, as I'm listening to this, we're talking a lot about dewatering. And while that is one thing that we need to consider with, solids as well as water, because they're, very little solids with a lot of water usually with these. That when we're draining the basins, like for cleaning and something, that water needs to go somewhere. So is there even a way that you could completely get rid of lagoons? Does that make sense? Julie, does that make sense?
Yeah, Bethany, I think part of the idea is to dewater back to the head of the plant when we can. And then I just well, Tim, do you want to jump in real quickly?
Sure. Just briefly, Bethany, that's a great point. And part of the reason that we've maintained showing some level of drying beds here is there are some critical infrastructure at a treatment plant. And one is always preparing for whether you're saying it's a maintenance where you're draining something down or even an overflow. There may be some scenario where they need to bypass or some overflow would occur, and you need to make sure you can retain that volume on site. So the concept is if we need to have these things and they're a sunk cost for safety, you might be able to get a little more bang for your buck by incorporating them into the first phase of the solids handling as well.
Harold,
Thank you.
thanks, Bethany. Harold asked, can we give a ballpark estimate of how much what kind of cost difference we're talking about between mechanical dewatering and the open drying basins? Is it $1 million, $10 million? Don't want to put you on the spot. Sorry.
Is that me?
I'd like to be able to look at spreadsheets that we have and give you a better number than trying to remember something off the top of my head, which will probably be wrong.
Okay.
So I've got 2 homework assignments for myself that I've noted already.
Okay. And then Linda asked, can the city do a special one-time assessment to raise money for mechanical dewatering versus drying basins? I'm guessing that the time, Chris is kind of our expert with financial things, but I'm guessing that the timing, I think we have to get the revenue to start this project next year. And I think the time it would take to do that, considering I'm not aware of that happening in recent history of the city, I'm just not sure that the timing would work out. But I'm wondering, Julie, and maybe this is something that we'll need to bring, maybe this is my homework assignment. I wonder if this is something that we could make part of the conversation of water rates. That I don't know if that's community input or I'm not sure, but maybe this is something that we could take a closer. Maybe we could make it a decision for the broader community. That I'm not sure. I guess this is something that's obviously an important topic to the group, and we need to do a little work and get back to the group on. And this is exactly why we're doing these meetings. This is so you are all making this project better. So thank you. Those are the comments and questions. Oh, I see one more. Is retrofitting with mechanical drying more expensive in the long run than the initial, and then instead of doing it up front?
I'm going to say yes and yes, because pushing anything into the future makes it more expensive. And piping probably would be reworked to push the water different places. the thing I'm really coming up against, and this is true for every single process, every single element of this site. When the city gives us a budget number, we're going to have issued debt, and we're going to invest in the city with this plant. If the debt that we get is fixed at a certain level, which it will be, whatever we do, whatever we construct, has to fit within that number. So on some level, anything is part of the same conversation. Is the chemical storage building too large? Let's make it smaller so that we can hit that number. And I'm not saying it is or it isn't at this point, but is the solids handling process system too elaborate? I'm not going to say fancy or not. Is it too elaborate? Do we have to cut it to make it fit that number? All of these questions, we have to make them work with the debt that the city allows us to use. And but I'm hearing you, and I am encouraged by all these ideas that you're throwing out, like, why don't you look at this? Why don't you consider that? These are things we can totally do at a 30% design level, and we will look at them. So I can commit to you that we will look at all these ideas and report back to you how we are or are not able to use them as we move forward. And these are just a glimpse into my world every single day, juggling all these questions, trying to figure out the best path forward. And best is defined by so many different things. So I do appreciate your thoughts, and I'm hearing you on the importance of keeping the solids handling more tidy rather than less tidy.
Thanks, Julie. Just one last question from Sandy. How likely is it to have adequate funding for even this plan, given the pushback around water rates? Is this a temporary pushback related to COVID? What type of outreach can help with better information? Great question, Sandy. I think this is really up to City Council, and so staff will be presenting some rate options and budget to City Council, on March 15th, as Christine Gray mentioned. And I'm sure part of pushback we've received is related to COVID. Some pushback that we've received on water rates happened before COVID happened. And what type of outreach can help with better information? I think if we could figure that out, that would be wonderful. We for this round of rates, the rate proposal, since it has to be mostly virtual engagement, we're trying a new digital platform called Bang the Table. This is used by many cities across the Front Range to help organize and get community input. And it provides a lot of ways for people to provide feedback and get educated. And so that westywaterrates.us, if you could check that out, provide feedback and share it with all your neighbors, that would be great, because that's going to be where a lot of this information will live. And with that, we're going to move on to the next phase, architecture. And I'm going to pass this over to Julie, who's going to introduce some people from CDM Smith. And I just want to say I apologize to everyone that's on the phone who doesn't have slides. I'm going to try to email you some slides while Julie and the CDM Smith talk. So please bear with me. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Andrew. I'd like to introduce Lee Arnon and Hassan El Rai with CDM Smith. They've been hard at work developing slides to show you today, so I'm just going to sign off and pass it on to Lee and Hassan to walk you through architecture where we sit today.
Good afternoon. I'll let Hassan start, and I'm available for questions. So.
Hello, everyone. As Julie and Andrew mentioned, we're from CDM Smith, and we're the two architects working on the project currently. And yeah, let's get started. Okay, looking at this site plan, this is obviously one of the preliminary site plans. Things are changing constantly as we update the drawings, so do not look at the dewatering and lagoons, as those may change pending decisions. What I really want you to focus on is the location of the admin building, the maintenance building, as well as the treatment trains in relationship to each other. For this design strategy, we focused on the campus style, as that's one of the ones that kind of expands on the site and creates less of a yard sale kind of effect. I just wanted you to make a mental note in relationship between the three structures that I talked about moving forward. So we can go to the next slide.
And just sorry to interject here. Just so these aren't going to, these concepts don't include any facade. So it's really just all about structure and form. Just want to make that point.
Correct. So looking at the massing form for these studies, we really wanted to focus on the roof types for the massing studies, as these have a strong visual impact on the shape of the building. And when I say massing studies, I'm talking about the general shape, the form, and the size of the buildings in relationship to each other, as well as the site. So as you can, going from left to right, we have the shed roof, which is a roof that slopes in one direction. It's very simplistic building type. The next one in the middle would be the gable roof, which is the most typical roof you'd see on most buildings and has a ridge with roof sloping in two directions. And the final option is the sawtooth roof, which, as you can see, has multiple slopes on a sawtooth pattern. You can go to the next slide. So in this first slide, we really wanted to focus on the admin building, which is the building located along the front of the site, running parallel to Westminster Boulevard. The building will be the face of the plant, so we really wanted to design a dynamic yet understated building that has a presence along Westminster Boulevard and US Route 36. You can go to the next slide.
Sorry, I'm
no worries.
working on it.
So I guess I can continue. Design strategy we used for this building was to create a datum line, which is basically a line across the building, which separates the lower and upper floors of the building, which is then used to create a strategy that anchors all the structures on the site and creates a cohesive design language across the building on the plant. In these views, we chose not to focus on materiality or color. We really wanted to focus on the form and the shape of the building and structures. And as the design progresses, we will begin to study materiality based on your guys' opinions and introduce color as well. So for the purposes of these studies, we really only used white and gray colors to help differentiate different materialities that we would begin to explore moving forward. In this view, you can clearly see the differentiation between the lower and upper floors. And if you look to the right of the building, or the right side of the building, you can see we created this covered outdoor space that can be used as a gathering location for when tours or schools come to learn about the water treatment plant, as well as a breakout space for the building to allow an indoor-outdoor experience when the weather permits, of course.
And I'll interject here too, Hassan, if you don't mind. I'd also like just reiterate what Hassan was saying about the design approach. Is we try to create a modern building that wasn't too crazy and kind of looked, kind of understood that we have some budget constraints, and so we try to do something that was simple and yet kind of unique along Westminster Boulevard.
Okay, so in this first design, this is the shed roof option, which again shows the datum line between the first floor and upper floors or the roof, depending on whether or not it's multi-story. The treatment train, which is the large centralized building, which again will be replicated in phase 2 as we move forward, shows a monoslope roof, which is replicated along as well on the maintenance building. Lots of skylights are also included to create some daylighting within the structures, which helps with overall mood inside as well as reducing electricity. You can go to the next slide. This is more of a close-up of what exactly would be included in phase 1. To the left would be the maintenance facility with the lab and control room that would be the minimum required to run this treatment train or treatment facility. And then to the right would be the chemical storage facility, which would house all the chemicals that would then be used to treat the water.
And the transparent structures in the back, those are future phases. Just so you can see that the build out will extend, to the full width of the site, but right now they're just future phases.
Correct. This option is the gable roof massing option, and this again is the most common roof type. This style closely represents a farm building style with monitors on the roof that have windows that also create natural light within the treatment trains. This style is also replicated on the maintenance facility as well, and you can see the datum as well across all the buildings. Again, another close-up view so you can get the overall, what would be included in phase 1, as well as the future treatment grayed out in the back.
And I'll talk a little bit about this too. There was a panelist that was asking about the height of the buildings. And one thing that's interesting is, the site slopes from the south toward the north. And Tim Reinders and the process mechanical engineers have developed this treatment module. So most of it's buried. Most of the treatment module is underground. And this dark gray band on the bottom of the building, that represents the actual treatment module. They're actually concrete tanks that are subterranean. But and we haven't shown the site sloping in this SketchUp model right now because we're at a pretty preliminary stage. But what will happen is the treatment module will be mostly underground up on the south end of the building, and then the site will slope down and the treatment module will kind of grow out of the ground. So on this end, it's probably 4 feet out of the ground, and on this end, it may be as high as 12 feet out of the ground. And then the building on top is just a one-story building. So it's the height is probably 15 feet to the gable. Maintenance building's a one-story building, and the admin building, the future admin building, that's a two-story building. And admin building may be the tallest building ultimately. We probably have 12-foot floor-to-floor heights, and that building may end up being 28 or 30 feet high. But the rest of the buildings are one-story buildings. Chemical building will have some height because of the height of the tanks, but we don't actually have the final capacity and size of those tanks, but it's also a one-story building.
Okay. And the final option is the sawtooth roof option. This option takes advantage of the site orientation and sun path to provide treatment chains with the most natural light, as the southern faces are on the roofs of the sawtooth are all glazing, which allows a lot of natural light. Yeah.
So Hassan and Lee, do you think it's a good time to vote on it, or maybe we should answer some questions first? Let's do that.
Agreed.
So Juliet asked, can we see what you'll present on the 15th in advance or search for it in packets to council? Curious to see what those rate recommendations are. Juliet, I think those will be finalized the week ahead of the meeting. And as soon as those are finalized, I will send a link to the group. Linda asked, do these designs utilize solar? That might be a question for Julie. I'm not sure.
Right now, they don't have active solar, like solar photovoltaic panels, but we are, the city's concerned about not only just the cost of the construction, but you also want to manage your operational costs. So through the building orientation and passive solar strategies, I mean, Hassan mentioned that most of these versions have clear stories or skylights or roof monitors. That's so that they can light the inside of the treatment module without having a reliance on electrical energy or electrical lighting. So as we further develop the designs, passive solar strategies will be a major part of the design effort, and as well as the selection of the materials and trying to create an efficient, well-insulated buildings. So, but currently we do not have active solar, such as energy generation with photovoltaics or that. One thing, I mean, I'm not sure how far you want to go with this conversation, but one thing we did talk about with Mary when we first started the project is geothermal heat pumps, geothermal heating and air conditioning. It's really an interesting opportunity that we have, that the treatment module is essentially a big tank, a big water holding tank, like a huge swimming pool. And there may be an opportunity to run geothermal lines underneath those water tanks and really reduce the energy costs in the building. So we haven't really gotten that far, at this preliminary stage. We're just looking at the form, but we are conscious of energy costs and the operational costs of the facility.
Thank you, Lee. We have some questions about kind of the pros and cons of the different options. One question that multiple people asked is there a cost difference between any of the options?
We don't completely know that yet. Both the option 1 and option 2, the shed roof and the gable roof, those are pretty easily achieved with a pre-engineered metal building. Option 3, also not a complicated structure, but you can see it might have more translucent elements or windows, or water drainage. Sometimes it's a challenge with a sawtooth roof, and it'll just have more detailing on that building, and it may be slightly more, be my guess. I'm not certain.
And then, are there any other disadvantages or advantages between the options? Someone asked, is there, is one option more efficient than others? Does one option provide more natural lighting than the others?
I don't know. Hassan, what do you think?
I mean, inherently with every design, there's going to be benefits and negatives to each design. I mean, with the shed roof, it's a simple roof. We can control water a lot easier in terms of how it flows off the roof. I mean, it all depends on how many skylights we would like to have on that roof, how much natural light. You can always increase and decrease the amount. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of strategies, but there's none that's really coming to mind overall that kind of differentiates each. It's mostly a form study that we're doing here. We can delve in deeper to more analysis on that moving forward, though, if we would like to.
Great. Well, with that, Matt, you asked, is the focus on PEMB? I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that means. Maybe some of our other speakers do.
Yeah, pre-engineered metal building.
Thank you.
It's not necessarily the focus. It's just a pretty cost efficient way to house a really, the treatment module is 100 feet wide by 300 feet long. So pre-engineered metal building, you get a really good cost savings with that kind of building. You also get, it can provide really large clear spans with no interior columns. So it'll free span over the entire treatment module, so people can move around, equipment can move around inside the building. So that's mostly the direction, is just trying to understand the size of that structure and then developing a cost-effective solution for enclosing that structure. And but as you can see on option 1, 2, and 3, they'd all be pre-engineered metal buildings. So you can. It's not like we're giving you something that you have seen in the tradition of pre-engineered metal building. It'll have a pretty interesting architectural skin. The lower parts of the building will use a masonry, earth tone masonry. We've heard some of your direction and some of your preferences for the colors and materials of the building. So we'll incorporate that on the building, and it'll. You can see even from these little SketchUp models that it's pretty interesting looking plant.
So I
Just
think
one item to add.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Andrew.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to add to Lee really quickly. Some of the structures that we are showing, like typically the pump station and the chemical building, are very commonly masonry buildings with some of that brick and natural colors that I know the group has chimed in about before. So really, we are showing the options on the pre-engineered metal buildings as a place where visual differentiation is probably the biggest piece. We can make all three details work pretty well in terms of efficiency and cost. So, I think that's why we're voting a little bit, just to really get a little input on visual appeal.
Thanks, Tim. So with that, I'm going to launch a poll through the webinar. And so the poll should be visible. And I realized that the image options, we couldn't add images to the poll. So option one is the shed roof design. Option 2 is the gable roof design. And option 3 is the sawtooth design. And I'm going to let that stay up. If you have any questions, I don't think we can vote as panelists. You should be able to. People are voting, Harold. You should be able to vote. So again, option 1 is the shed roof design. Option 2 is the gable roof design. And option 3 is the oh, interesting. So people are.
Yeah, I'm not able to vote either, Andrew.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, some people voted, some people haven't. Let me think about this. I wonder why that is. We've done these polls before. How about if everyone. Okay, let me think about this. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make people attendees. You're going to lose. I got you. Okay. Wow, I'm sorry about this. I thought we've done this before, but apparently everyone was attendees before. So I'm going to make everyone attendees. And while I do that, please, please don't hesitate to ask more questions and unmute yourself. I'm going to close the poll. Just bear with me 1 second. Well, you know, I said that, and I can't make you attendees once you're a panelist. Well, I am so sorry about that, everyone. Let me, what I will do is I will follow up with an electronic survey. So sorry about that. I thought we've done these before, but apparently we haven't with everyone as panelists. So feel free to add your preference in the chat, but I will be sending out a link to do a vote electronically. Sorry about that, everyone. Yeah, some people were able to vote. Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, sorry about that. Any other questions on design? Okay. I'm going to move on. Sorry about that, everyone. So what I'll do is I'll send, feel free to email me, and I'll also send a survey link out, and then I'll make sure I summarize everyone's preferences and get that back to you so you can see who or what the overall preference of the group is. My apologies. So we have about 9 minutes left, and we wanted to talk about next steps in terms of public outreach. So we've been working with this group, with all of you, for a little over a year now, and the plan has been to, once this group is comfortable with certain preferences, that we would go to the larger community. Sorry about that. So the timing of the next phase of public outreach would be sometime between April and June. That's what we're thinking. And feel free to kind of unmute yourself and comment on this, and also kind of put it in the chat, your thoughts. We would bring what this group thought was what was ready to go to the community. We would provide an overview of the project, some background of why a new water treatment plant is needed, and then we would present the concepts. And so one question I want to ask the group is, you know, are these concepts ready to go? If, you know, what might need to, you know, what changes might we need to make to make the concepts ready to present to the larger community? And then lastly, you know, should we present one option or multiple options? And feel free to unmute yourself or add a question there.
And Andrew, by option, what do you mean exactly?
So, great question. It would be, should we present one, you know, the preferred option from the group? And I think we probably need to see what the votes are to do that. Or should we present all three options to the larger community and say, here's what the design working group preferred, but all three options are on the table, and get feedback on those?
I guess one thing that would be important for me is if you're going to present just form without any information on material, I think people would be inclined to see these as big metal buildings and not be happy at all. So I think you need to introduce something about the kinds of materials and facade we talked about.
Maybe the design team could comment on that. Is it feasible to present the design forms with some materials on it? I'm not sure exactly how that could work.
I think it could be a good idea. I would present what the result is from the group of what we pick, so that people don't get confused and now there's all these different options and, you know, versus the design team picked an option and then what the materials would be is what I would present. That's my opinion.
So I'm reading through some comments here. Patrick, could you clarify? Okay, I think Patrick's asking, does the design team have a preference, and could they share their thoughts between the three forms?
Hey, Andrew, I didn't hear the question.
Patrick asked, does the design team have a preference for one of the options? And if so, could you share your thoughts? On
You know, I don't think we do at this early stage. I think that all of the three versions can, as I said, in the large structures incorporate masonry, glass, translucent panels, and I think that it will be an interesting plant. I'd also like to go back to, you know, Tim Reinders reminded us of this, is that, you know, we really showed just the treatment module because it's such a large structure, 100 by 300 feet. But there are masonry buildings, the finished water pump station, the generator room, the dewatering structure, the chemical building, and the future admin building will be as predominant on the site. You know, they're actually like the maintenance building is from Westminster Boulevard. The maintenance building is in front of the treatment module. So you will see those other buildings, and we could show some with materials. I mean, we'll continue to evolve this through the month of March. So if your public outreach is in April, we can develop something that shows the materiality better. But as far as the form, I'll tell you one thing. Hassan designed that admin building. He did really a genius thing with that admin building. Is he designed that building with an offset gable, which means that the ridge is not in the middle. It's kind of long on one side and short on the other side, the roof slope. So that admin building is really compatible with both the shed roof concept and the gable roof concept. So it's just something to let you know that it'll still be a cohesive campus if it gets ultimately all built out. One other thing I'd mention, you know, when people are considering those forms that we've talked about internally, is that the gable roof form with the roof monitors, which was option 2, you know, that those buildings are often associated with agriculture buildings, like farm buildings, and sometimes a community will kind of embrace that, so it doesn't really look like an industrial plant. It looks more like a farm. The shed roof, that's kind of a low profile on one side, and that wedge is kind of an interesting shape as well. And on the sawtooth comment, option 3, you know what's interesting about that option is if we use the shed roof on option 1, and then we do the ultimate build out where it has all 3 treatment modules, it'll look like a sawtooth roof, but it'll be sloped west to east instead of north and south. So they're all kind of interesting in their own way. It's just, you know, your community preference, you know, what kind of a neighbor are you going to have with the treatment facility? That's the question for the design working group.
Well, we are running out of time here. And this is what I think. I think we need to have some more discussion about this design work before bringing it to the community. Julie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but this is what I propose. I propose that we follow up with this group. with a survey asking them for to vote on their preference and maybe some follow-up questions to get more directions, and then maybe follow up with this group on the first Tuesday of April. And then we can get some more information on things that were asked of us today.
That's a good idea.
Okay. So I don't want to go over. I want to respect everyone's time. This has been very, very helpful for us. We owe the group some more information. I need to put together a survey so everyone can vote on their preferences. And we will follow up with a meeting in April, but before going to the broader community. With that, I want to thanks everyone for your time. I'm sorry if we didn't get to all of your comments. We've got some homework to do, and we'll be following up with people. For people on the phone, I especially apologize for not getting you the slides beforehand. And we'll be in touch, and we'll have a meeting in April. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.